Hello, Ian Sachs here, joined by Iona Mass Comm professor Mike Demergis. And now, Mike, you've been at Iona for for a long time.
Decades.
Decades. That is a great way to describe it. Now, Mike, you were here in the 80s as an undergraduate student, 85 to 89. Came back for your master's in the O's, 04 to 06, and now you're here as a professor. So you really have a good sense of Iona history, say the last 30 years or so. And today I want to sit down and talk to you about the Iona football program and or lack thereof in the current state now. So Mike, when you were here in the 80s, the team started out, and the 80s was a very much of a down period for the team during your 4 years here. First 2 years going winless, and then picking up some wins, and then
87 was our first win, I think. I was on the team in 85, and I remember in high school I'd watch Iona men's football football on I believe it was one of the cable channels. I don't remember if it was channel 3 or 12 at the time. And they used to play Friday nights over at Memorial Field. I thought, wow, this is cool. Iona has a football team. And I remember there was a running back. I can't remember his name, number 22. Really, really good player. And I just thought it was cool, college football in New York here. So when I finished high school, I never played high school football. I did try out for the team, and I don't know, I wasn't playing running back. And, I said, they had me at wide receiver. I didn't want to play receiver. So I tried out for the team in 85. Coach Crocker, Harold Crocker was the coach, and I remember going through the training camp here, doing 3-a-days, and there probably had at least 50 or 60 kids on the team, and we spent our summer camp up at Camp Smith up in upstate New York. The worst week of my life. Living in Army barracks. The food was terrible. Doing 3-a-days, wake up, stretching in the morning dew. We used to scrimmage against Westchester Community College, where I got my lights knocked out of me by a linebacker that was down from Syracuse. He wound up going to play in the NFL for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I was 160 pounds. Should not have been playing football. But we did have a team. And you know what? It was pretty fun, and we weren't very good, and it was still, even back then, it was about the basketball team. Always has been about the basketball team in Arizona, but it was cool having a football team.
So you just 1 year that you played football here, then?
Actually, I went through the camp and wound up playing 2 games in that one. That was really it. And after that, I just realized, you know what? I'm not big enough for this game. I didn't have the size. I wasn't going to be a professional player. I was getting banged up, and so I called it after 2 games.
Okay, so now the rest of your time here as a student, what was it like going to the games? How much did you participate as a fan, a spectator? Did you work at the games?
No, I actually didn't, and the games were not on campus. They were over at Memorial Field, so we'd go to the games there in Mount Vernon. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't. It was more about going to the game, and the team wasn't very good. Eventually, they got pretty good. I know they won championships in the 90s, and they turned the program around. And once we got the artificial turf field, they play games here, so it kind of brought the community together a little bit. So I don't remember being a big thing. It was kind of considered we were bad, and it was kind of like a running joke a little bit. But it was like I said, cool to have a football team.
So you mentioned Coach Crocker, and you played for him. What was he like? I know he was really the one that orchestrated the turnaround.
Coach Crocker, and he doesn't know this, was an inspiration. I remember the training camp. Our first game was against Hofstra. Hofstra produces NFL players. Now, Gino Carmazzi drafted ahead of Tom Brady, by the 49ers, and also the Marcus Colston, wide receiver currently with New Orleans Saints. Hofstra was pretty much a professional, as far as a Division I college at the time. And we were playing them, and they were a powerhouse. And Crocker had us believing we were going to win that game. We were going to go to Hofstra. I'll never forget it. I remember taking the bus ride out there, and we thought we were going to win the game. And I was number 18. I was like 5th on the depth chart, and we only had 4 running backs. So that tells you how good I was. And we were all rah, rah, rah in the locker room ahead of time. The opening kickoff. They do a reverse on the kickoff, run it back for a touchdown. They wound up being ahead of us at halftime, 42-0. And I remember the halftime in the locker room, everybody just looking at each other like, what the hell happened? And I heard from my friends the next day. He goes, "What happened to you guys?" Warner Wolf said if you took Iona and 57.5 points, you lost. So Crocker was an inspiration. After that, we went down to Villanova, who was restarting their program. And we were actually tied at 7 down in Villanova. And I remember the fans yelling at us, "Where the hell is Iona? You know, we never heard of your school." And we were tied at 7 against the Wildcats at the time. We wound up losing the game 27-7. So it was a great experience for me.
Yeah. So you're a football lifer, favorite sport, and you spent so much time with it. You've worked in the industry. You even wrote a book about the USFL. How did that experience playing with the team shape you in your experience with the sport as a whole?
I think it made me appreciate the hits, working in the sports industry. And I always find it comical. Some guys that never even picked up a football make comments about guys not being tough enough. It made me understand what the body has to go through to get hit and then get up and keep playing. I could take a hit, but it's hard playing when you're hurt. And you get hit by guys, 30, 40, 50 pounds, in my case, 100 pounds heavier than me. And to get up and try and play again, I totally respect them. And I totally understand why running backs only last 3 or 4 years. And to me, the hardest thing to do is playing with injuries. I mean, you're black and blue all over, and you understand why. And I always say this, I don't mind that football players are using steroids because I don't think the NFL could put a team together if players weren't on steroids. That's why you see it, like Rodney Harrison and some of the biggest names. They do their 4-game suspension. That's it, and no one says if guys going in the Hall of Fame if you use steroids or not. It's acceptable in football, and I have the utmost respect for football players and the injury factor they go through. So it did affect me in my professional analysis of games.
So now, I spoke to the head athletic trainer here, and he said that when the school dropped the football program, his job changed dramatically because football dominated his all year round, and now he was able to help the other teams in the athletics department. So now, Mike, playing football and seeing all the hits, you said that it's helped you in your broadcasting career. Just expand on that a little more, and how has that helped you in your analysis?
Well, you respect the body more. You respect players' decisions not to play, as far as understanding players when they're dealing with injuries. You understand what a shin splint is and pulling calf muscles, and shoulder injuries, and you just you're able to get a sense of things, and you kind of get respect for players that play hurt, and can do that. Believe me, playing hurt in baseball is very different from playing hurt in football, and I totally respect the rule changes in football. Why do we have to lead with the head and use the head as a weapon like Chris Dishman used to do for the Oilers in the 80s and 90s? If you look at old football before they had the helmets, you didn't see guys diving. They actually had to tackle guys and use techniques. So I applaud the NFL for finally, teaching techniques as far as tackling. And we should have gotten rid of using the head as a weapon years ago. But you just get an understanding as far as the pain these players go through, and you look at them years later, and they stop playing football, and you see linemen lose 50 pounds. I saw Chris Snee the other day, retired by the Giants. He looks like half the man he used to be when he was a lineman, and just the brutality that these players go through, and they earn every dollar. And the fact that the old-time retired players aren't getting money from the current system, the current CBA, from the Players Association is a shame, because they've gone through so much. And to me, football players whose contracts are not guaranteed, there should be some kind of like $10 or $20 million bonus to them if their careers are cut short.
Definitely a heated discussion here in the injuries of football. But Mike, final question here now. Football has grown exponentially in popularity in this country. To what can you attribute that?
Well, you get 16 games a year. That's number one. If you're lucky, if your team's bad, you may have a rooting sense of maybe 4 games, and the season's pretty much over. It's like if you have steak every day, you have it with baseball. You're not going to want steak every day. If you have steak 16 times a year, you're going to be craving steak. And again, depending on how good or bad your team. And it's 3 hours. It's on Sunday. the hype before the game, the analysis after the game. And it's like, if you have a starting quarterback like Tom Brady, in your sense, being a Patriots fan. What if Jacob deGrom pitched every game for the Mets? Every game. That's what football is like. You have your best pitcher out there every game, and you lose that interest if the number 4 or 5 pitchers going for your team. You might lose interest if you watch the backup. If you watch Geno Smith, quarterback, what interest are you going to have? And that's the biggest thing with football. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. A good quarterback makes a 4-8 team, an 8-8 team, a 4-12 team, an 8-8 team. Dan Marino was on some bad teams in Miami, but he was able to get that team, which is probably 8-8, to 11-5, 12-4 many years. Quarterback makes all the difference in the world.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule today. Definitely sharing a lot of insight, having played a few snaps of college football and, just spending so much time around the sport. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Again, this is Ian Sachs with Mike DeMurgis.